Eli had always been a quiet man, the kind who kept his thoughts inside and worked with steady hands. He lived on a small ranch at the edge of a wide western valley, a place where the wind moved like a slow river and the sun stretched long shadows across the ground. People in town respected him because he was polite and honest, but he rarely stayed long in conversations. He would tip his hat, smile softly, and walk away before anyone could ask too much. He did not dislike people. He just never knew what to say. His life was simple. Wake early, feed the animals, fix fences, check water supply, and work until the moon rose. The quiet suited him. He did not expect anything to change. But one morning, as he was tying down hay in the barn, he heard horses approaching, several of them. When he stepped outside, he saw members of a nearby tribal community riding toward him. They moved calmly, showing no sign of trouble. Still, Eli wiped his hands nervously on his shirt and waited. Their leader, an older man with silver hair tied back in a long braid, greeted him with respect. Behind him stood a woman who towered above everyone, including the men beside her. Her name was Tala. Her height was the first thing anyone noticed. But Eli saw something else too, the quiet steadiness in her eyes. She held herself with confidence, not pride. And she watched everything with a calm, thoughtful expression. The leader explained the situation in a peaceful tone. Years ago, an agreement had been made between both communities. Should a time come when a partnership was needed to keep peace between the lands, a marriage would be arranged, not forced, but chosen carefully for the good of both sides. That time had come. A dispute between ranchers and hunters over water rights threatened to grow into something dangerous. A union between families could settle it without conflict. Eli listened, unsure where this was going, until the leader said plainly, "Our people trust you. You have helped us many times. You avoid trouble. You are fair. We ask you to consider joining with Tala." Eli nearly dropped the rope he was holding. His voice stuck in his throat. Him married? He barely knew how to talk to strangers, let alone take a wife. He looked at Tala, unable to hide his shock. She stood straight and calm, her expression unreadable. But there was no sign of anger or pushiness in her gaze. The leader continued gently, "This is not a demand. It is an invitation. Tala has agreed to honor the old agreement. You may accept or refuse with respect." Eli's heart pounded. He wanted to run inside and hide behind his horses. Yet deep down, he understood why he had been chosen. He had spent years keeping peace, helping both groups, delivering supplies during dry seasons, and staying honest when others weren't. This was not a trick, and no one was trying to force him into something cruel. It was simply a responsibility one he had never imagined, but one placed before him with trust. Tala finally spoke, her voice steady and soft. "If you decide no, we will leave in peace. If you decide yes, we will walk forward with respect. I need a partner who is steady, not loud." Her words were simple, but they held meaning. Eli swallowed hard, his throat tight. He had never been good at quick decisions, but something about her voice made him pause. She was not asking for romance or promises she did not expect. She was asking for cooperation, understanding, and honesty. Those were things he could give. After a long, quiet moment, Eli nodded once. I will do my best," he said. Tala gave a small nod back, as if accepting a handshake no one saw. The leader smiled with relief, and the community thanked Eli for his willingness. The marriage was arranged quickly and respectfully. It was a simpler circle of people, gentle words, and two lives quietly joined for the sake of peace. Eli kept his eyes on the ground most of the time, feeling his ears warm with embarrassment. He was not used to people watching him. Tala stood tall beside him, calm and serious. When the ceremony ended, she looked at him with a kind expression that made him feel less overwhelmed. "We will learn slowly," she said softly. They set out toward Eli's ranch in the late afternoon. The sun hung low, painting the sky in gentle orange light. Tala rode on a strong horse, and Eli on his old bay mare. They didn't talk much. Eli's heart kept racing, but he didn't know if it was fear or responsibility. He tried to think about what she would expect, what he should say, what kind of husband he was supposed to be. He had no answers. Tala noticed his silence, but she did not push him. She simply rode beside him, letting the soft wind guide their path. She understood that his quietness was not disrespect. It was who he was. As they arrived at the ranch, the sky darkened with heavy clouds. A storm was forming on the horizon. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain. Eli dismounted quickly and began checking the ropes that held down supplies. He felt awkward having a new bride standing there, unsure whether to offer help or wait. He wished he had prepared the house earlier, but he had not expected guests, let alone a wife. Tala stepped down from her horse with ease. Instead of waiting, she picked up a saddle and carried it into the barn with surprising gentleness. As though she had grown up around ranch tools, Eli blinked, surprised. She noticed his expression and said, "I know how to work. I do not need to stand still." Her tone was calm, not defensive. Eli felt a small wave of relief. He wasn't sure why. But her willingness to help made the situation less frightening. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Eli hurried to prepare the house. He moved tools, checked windows, and lit lamps. Tala followed him inside, watching him carefully. She saw the way he kept his hands busy so he wouldn't have to think too much. She saw how he checked every corner twice to make sure everything was safe. She saw how he avoided looking at her for too long, not out of disrespect, but because he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Finally, when the rain started tapping against the roof, they sat across from each other at the small wooden table. The silence between them felt heavy, not hostile, just unfamiliar. Tala folded her hands together and looked at Eli with patience. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, feeling unsure. Tala decided to make it easier for him. She said gently, "We will take things one step at a time. We are strangers, but we can become partners. It does not need to happen fast." Eli let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Her calmness softened something in him. He nodded slightly and said, "Thank you. I want to do things right." The storm outside grew louder, shaking the windows slightly. The ranch sat far from neighbors, and tonight they were truly alone. Tala looked around the room, noticing the quiet strength of the place, well-built walls. A clean floor, neatly arranged tools. Eli took pride in his home, even if he never spoke about it. After a long moment, Tala spoke again. "We're alone now," she said softly, her voice steady and practical. "Let's do what's necessary." Eli's heart jumped at the words, but not for the reasons most people might expect. He understood her meaning. She was not asking for anything inappropriate. She was talking about survival chores, planning, sharing work, setting rules for living together, learning each other's habits, and creating peace in the home just as their communities hoped. Her words could have frightened a less steady man. But Eli surprised her. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He simply stood up, grabbed a lantern, and said calmly, "Let's start by checking the windows again. The storm is getting stronger." His steady tone shocked Tala in the best way. She had expected him to be scared or confused, but instead he responded with quiet confidence. He looked shy, yes, but inside him was a steady core she had not seen before. As they worked side by side, Tala realized that maybe she had misjudged him a little. Eli wasn't weak or timid. He was simply careful with his heart. And that kind of man, she thought, might be exactly the partner she needed. The storm grew stronger through the night, shaking the walls of the small ranch house. Rain hit the windows like handfuls of pebbles, and the wind whistled through every crack it could find. Eli moved with quiet urgency, checking each window latch, each lamp, each door frame. Tala followed behind him, studying the way he worked. He didn't rush or panic, he simply moved carefully. With steady hands that showed years of dealing with trouble alone, Tala realized something important during those early minutes. Eli wasn't acting calm for her sake. He had always been this way. He dealt with storms the same way he dealt with people, with patience, precision, and thoughtful silence. She admired that kind of strength. She had grown up around loud voices and quick tempers, where decisions were made with force. Eli, on the other hand, moved like a man who understood that calmness was its own kind of power. When the wind slammed a loose shutter against the wall, Eli didn't jump. He only said, "I'll fix it," grabbed his coat, and went out into the rain. Tala hurried after him without a word. The cold wind pushed against them, tugging at their clothes. But Eli focused on the task. Tala held the lantern while he hammered the shutter into place. Her strong arm kept the light steady, even as the storm howled around them. Rain dripped from Eli's hat brim, running down his cheeks like thin silver lines. Tala watched the calm determination in his face. Most men she knew would have shouted over the storm or cursed at the broken shutter. But Eli didn't waste energy on frustration. He simply fixed what needed fixing. When they were finally back inside, both dripping, Eli handed her a dry cloth. "You didn't have to come out there," he said quietly. Tala answered. "I don't leave people alone in storms." Looked down almost embarrassed, but also grateful. This time he didn't hide it. As the night deepened, the two of them settled into a quiet rhythm. Tala helped put away tools. Eli swept water from the floor. The storm kept growling outside, making the house feel even smaller and more isolated. Eli was used to being alone on nights like this. Tala was used to being surrounded by siblings and relatives. Now both of them found themselves learning how to share a space with someone new at one point. The lamp flickered as a strong gust shook the house. Tala instinctively stiffened, ready to react. Eli noticed and said in his gentle voice, "The house is strong. I built most of it myself." His calm confidence eased her tension. "You built all this alone?" she asked. "Piece by piece," he answered. "It gave me something to do, something steady." She nodded slowly. She understood what steady work could do for a person's mind. She had spent many years helping her own family build shelters and repair tools. She respected people who worked with their hands and their heart. Eli offered her a warm drink, and she accepted. They sat at the table again, this time with the soft glow of lamplight settling over them. The shadows danced on the walls, making the small house feel almost warm despite the storm. For a long moment neither spoke. Tala waited for him to talk first, wanting to understand him better. Eli opened his mouth several times, searching for the right words. Finally, he said, "I know things are strange, you being here. The marriage happening so fast. I don't want you to feel trapped." Tala looked at him closely. He wasn't saying it out of fear. He was saying it out of respect. "I do not feel trapped," she said firmly. "I agreed to this. My people trust you, and I want to understand you. I want to help this work." Eli stared at his hands as if weighing her words. "I'm just not very good with people," he admitted softly. "I don't talk much. I don't know what a husband is supposed to act like." Tala shook her head gently. "There is no single way a husband must act. I do not need loud promises. I only need honesty," he nodded, still unsure how to hold her gaze for long. But something softened in him. Her calm tone, her steady presence, it made the fear shrink. For a moment, the wind quieted, and the house felt incredibly still. Tala took a slow breath. She knew the next words would matter. She spoke them clearly, with no hidden meaning. "We're alone now," she said. "Let's do what's necessary." She meant planning, understanding, deciding how to share the ranch chores, how to live together without discomfort. She meant creating stability. It's the same way she had always done with her family. Eli lifted his head. His reaction surprised her. He didn't look frightened. He didn't look overwhelmed. Instead, he stood up, grabbed a notebook from the shelf, and laid it on the table. "We can start by making a list," he said calmly. "You tell me what you're used to doing. I'll tell you what I usually handle. We'll divide the work." Tala blinked slowly. She had not expected him to respond like that, with clear thinking, with readiness, with simple common sense. She admired it. Eli took a pencil and drew lines down the page. "I'll take the animals at dawn," he said. "I always do. If you want, you can check the water barrels and the tools." "Only if you want." Tala gave a quiet smile. "I can do that. We'll fix the fence after the storm," he continued. "It's always the first thing that breaks." She nodded. I can lift the heavy beams. I can mend the wires, he said. They planned like that for almost an hour. Calm, steady, practical. The conversation had no awkwardness, no pressure, just two people finding a way to work together. Tala saw clearly then. Eli may have been shy with strangers, but he came alive when discussing work, responsibilities, and order. He knew how to manage a ranch, and he knew how to plan for survival. His quiet mind was sharper than she had realized. As the night drew on, the storm slowly began to fade. The wind softened, the rain eased, and the house grew quiet. Eli stretched his tired arms and said, almost apologetically, I'm not good at talking, but I am good at working. Maybe that can help us. Tala responded gently, You have already helped us. You listened. You planned. That is more than many men would do. Eli looked down with a shy smile. He wasn't used to praise, and it made his cheeks warm. When the storm finally passed, they both stepped outside to check the damage. The air smelled clean, like wet earth and pine. The moon peeked through the clouds, lighting the ranch in silver. The yard was muddy. Some tools were blown aside. One fence post leaned dangerously. Tala crouched and touched the ground. Tomorrow will be a hard day, she said. It will, Eli agreed. But we'll handle it. Her eyes softened. We will handle it, she repeated, liking the sound of it. As they walked back toward the house, Eli noticed that she was walking a little ahead of him, not in a controlling way, just naturally. But when she realized it, she slowed down, so they walked side by side. That small gesture meant more to Eli than she realized. Inside the house, Tala prepared her sleeping area with calm movements. Eli gave her space, not wanting her to feel uncomfortable. If you need anything, he began, but his voice faded with shyness. Tala finished his sentence for him. I will ask, she said kindly. He nodded and moved to the other side of the room. The silence between them no longer felt heavy. It felt peaceful, natural, earned. Before sleeping, Tala looked at him and said softly, Eli, today showed me something important. You are steady. You think before you speak. I respect that. Eli swallowed hard, touched by the unexpected words. And I respect your strength, he replied quietly. Not just your size, your calmness, your way of stepping forward when something needs doing. They shared a small, shy smile. The storm had brought them together in a way neither expected, and as they lay down to rest, two strangers beginning a life they never planned, they both understood something without saying it. The hardest part wasn't the storm outside. It was learning to open their hearts. One quiet moment at a time. The morning after the storm began with a cold wind and a soft gray sky. The ground outside was still wet, and puddles shone like silver mirrors. Eli stepped out of the house first, rubbing his tired eyes. He had barely slept. Not because of fear, but because he was thinking. He kept replaying Tala's calm words, her steady presence, the quiet partnership that had started forming between them. Tala came out a moment later. Her long hair was tied back, and she looked ready to work. She wasn't dressed for comfort. She was dressed for effort. Eli noticed how she carried herself, not like someone waiting for orders, but like someone ready to stand beside him. They began their work in silence. The storm had knocked over barrels, thrown tools across the yard, and broken several fence posts. Eli expected Tala to choose the lighter tasks or watch him work first, but she walked straight toward the fallen beams near the fence and lifted one with careful strength. Eli blinked in surprise. That's heavy, he said softly. It needs moving. She replied simply. He nodded, realizing she wasn't trying to impress him. She was just doing what needed to be done. That was something he respected deeply. They spent the early hours lifting, clearing, and sorting. Eli worked with careful hands, fixing smaller pieces and checking the damage closely. Tala carried heavier items and helped dig out the tools buried in mud. They didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't awkward anymore. It felt like two hands working on the same task, a shared purpose. After an hour, Eli stopped beside the damaged fence. The wooden post was cracked almost all the way through. He frowned and touched the broken edge. This will need replacing, he said. Tala came over and knelt beside him. Show me how. Eli hesitated. He was used to doing things alone. Teaching someone felt strange. But Tala waited patiently. So he showed her how to dig around the old post, how to loosen the soil, how to angle the replacement so it would withstand strong winds. She listened closely, repeating each step with care. Her large hands moved with surprising gentleness as she fitted the new post into place. Eli held the top while she worked the bottom. They shared the effort like two sides of the same rhythm. You're good at this, Eli said quietly. Tala looked up, slightly surprised. No one had ever complimented her for simple work like this. Thank you, she said, her voice softer than usual. They checked the rest of the fence line together. Some parts were sturdy, some needed patching, and one section had completely collapsed. Eli sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. This might take all day. Then we have all day, Tala replied, picking up a broken beam. Eli looked at her for a moment. Trilly looked. Most people complained about ranch chores, acted tired, or tried to avoid the hardest jobs. But Tala accepted the work without hesitation. She didn't act above it. She didn't expect someone else to do it. She worked with him, not behind him. Around midday, they took a break under the shade of an old oak tree. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, warming the valley. Eli handed Tala a tin cup of cool water. She drank slowly, watching the hillside. You worked hard this morning, Eli said quietly. So did you, she answered. You repaired more things than I realized. Eli smiled lightly. Just habits. When you live alone long enough, you learn to fix everything yourself. Tala looked at him with understanding. And when you grow up with many siblings, she said, you learn to share everything: work, food, space, even thoughts. Eli laughed softly, the sound surprising both of them. Tala watched him with a gentle expression, noticing how different he looked when he smiled. His shyness didn't disappear, but it softened around the edges, like sunlight touching the side of a quiet mountain. After resting, they returned to work. Tala helped lift the collapsed part of the fence while Eli hammered the boards into place. Every time she held something steady for him, he thanked her in a soft voice. She wasn't used to receiving thanks so often. Many people took her strength for granted. Eli treated her strength like a gift, not an expectation. In the afternoon, they worked on the shed roof. The storm had torn off several shingles, leaving gaps where rain could leak in. Eli climbed the ladder, but the wind made it wobble. Tala placed her hands on the sides, stabilizing it with ease. You won't fall, she said calmly. I have it. Eli believed her. He trusted her more than he expected. He worked faster, knowing she held the ladder steady. When he climbed down, their eyes met for a moment, and something warm passed silently between them, a quiet trust that didn't need words. By late afternoon, much of the storm damage was repaired. The barn was cleaned, the fences mostly fixed, and the tools sorted. Tala and Eli stood side by side looking at their work. The ranch looked alive again, not bruised and battered. Eli rubbed his tired shoulders. Thank you, he said. I could never have done all this alone. Tala shook her head. You could, but you don't have to anymore. Her words hung in the air like a soft promise. Eli felt something shift inside him. For years, he had lived with the belief that he had to manage everything himself, every broken board, every lonely night, every quiet worry. Now, standing beside Tala, he felt the weight of life lighten just a little. They walked back to the house slowly, their legs heavy from the day's work. Tala paused before stepping inside. She looked at the ranch, the fields, the repaired fences, the shining puddles in the evening light. This place is peaceful, she said. It's home, Eli answered quietly. She turned toward him. It can be our home, Eli's breath caught. She wasn't forcing anything. She wasn't rushing. She was simply offering a truth that felt warm and steady. Inside the house, they washed up and prepared a simple meal. Eli cooked quietly, and Tala set the table. The small movements felt natural, to people sharing space, settling into a rhythm neither expected but both were beginning to appreciate. During dinner, the conversation came easier than before. Eli told her about the early years when he first built the ranch. How he struggled, how he learned, how he kept going even when things went wrong. Tala told him about her childhood, how she helped her siblings, how her family respected her, how people sometimes misunderstood her calmness for distance. "You are not distant," Eli said, surprising even himself with his boldness. "You're thoughtful." Tala felt something warm in her chest. No one had said that to her before. They finished eating, cleaned up, and stepped outside to watch the sunset. The sky glowed with shades of orange, gold, and soft red. Birds flew low over the valley, returning to their nests. Tala took a slow breath. "Today was hard," she said. "Tomorrow might be harder," Eli replied. She looked at him, waiting to see fear or doubt, but he only added, "We'll handle it." The same words she had spoken the night before. Tala smiled, a small, rare smile that softened her strong face. "Yes," she said, "we will." They stood quietly as the sun dipped behind the hills. The air cooled and the first stars appeared. Something had changed between them, not something loud or dramatic,
Oh!
but something steady and growing. Trust, respect, a beginning. When they walked back inside, neither felt like a stranger anymore. The ranch was no longer Eli's alone, and Tala was no longer a guest. They were becoming partners, not by force, not by tradition, but by choice. Built slowly, patiently, like the careful repairs they had made throughout the day. The next days passed quietly, filled with steady routines and shared work. The storm had left its mark on the valley, but Eli and Tala repaired everything together. What began as an unexpected arrangement was slowly turning into something stable, something real. Neither of them rushed anything. Their bond grew in the same way grass grows after rain slowly, but with strong roots. Every morning, Eli woke early to feed the animals, and every morning Tala stepped outside soon after, ready to take on her share of the chores. She checked the water barrels, organized tools, and helped repair anything that still needed fixing. She wasn't just helping, she was learning the rhythm of the ranch, understanding what needed care and what could wait. Eli began noticing that she sometimes finished tasks before he even asked. One morning, as Eli was checking the fence line, he heard soft, steady footsteps behind him. Without turning, he knew it was Tala. "Fence is holding," she said. He nodded. "You anchored the post well. You taught me well," she replied. He looked at her then, realizing how much that simple exchange meant. They weren't speaking like strangers anymore. They were speaking like partners, people who trusted each other's judgment. By midday, they were back at the barn, sorting hay bales and repairing a broken latch on the feed room door. Eli was crouched, checking the hinges. When Tala walked over and held the door steady, "You always work quietly," she said. Eli shrugged lightly. "Quiet work gets done faster. Sometimes it gets lonely too," Tala added. He paused, looking up at her. "It did," he admitted softly. "But not now." Those words surprised her, and she felt a small warmth rise inside her chest. She didn't reply, but she didn't need to. Eli's honesty was enough. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was sincere, and sincerity, she had learned, was one of Eli's strongest qualities. Later that afternoon, they took a break near the small pond behind the ranch. The water was still muddy from the storm, but the air around it was fresh and cool. Birds chirped in the trees and a soft breeze rustled the grass. Tala sat on a fallen log, stretching her tired arms. Eli sat nearby, holding a cup of water. They both stared at the pond in silence. "You work harder than anyone I've known," Tala said. Eli shook his head. "I just try to keep things in order." "You keep more than the ranch in order," she said quietly. He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You keep peace," she explained. "Peace around you. Peace inside you." Eli stared at the pond again, feeling her words settle deep inside him. No one had ever said something like that to him before. Most people just saw him as the quiet rancher who kept to himself. Tala saw more. The peaceful moment was interrupted when horses approached from the distance. Eli and Tala stood up at the same time, both alert. Dust rose behind the riders. and soon a small group of townsmen came into view. They were the same men who often delivered news or supplies to the ranch. But today their faces carried curiosity and something judgmental. When they reached the ranch, one of them whistled low when he saw Tala. "She's taller than a barn door," one man whispered loudly. "Did you hire help or marry a giant?" Another joked. Eli stiffened. Tala stood calm, but her eyes cooled slightly. She had heard similar comments before, but hearing them at her new home felt different. Eli stepped forward, his voice firm but controlled. "She's my wife," he said. "Show respect." The men fell silent for a moment, surprised. Eli rarely raised his voice or spoke with firmness, but now his words felt like strong stakes driven into the ground. One man tried to laugh it off. "We didn't mean nothing by it, Eli. Just surprised is all." Eli's eyes didn't soften. People deserve respect, especially in their own home. Tala watched all of this quietly. She expected him to stay silent, to stay shy like he usually did in front of others. But he didn't. He chose the right moment to draw a boundary, not with anger, not with force, but with steady confidence. That kind of defense meant more to her than anything loud or dramatic. When the men finally left, Tala turned to Eli. "You didn't need to defend me." He shook his head. "Yes, I did." They were wrong. Tala stood silent for a moment. Then she spoke softly, "Thank you." He looked slightly embarrassed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just don't like people being unkind." "You weren't unkind," she said. "You were steady." Eli didn't reply, but Tala saw a shy pride in his eyes. They returned to their work, but something had changed in the air. Eli's action had strengthened their bond. Tala had always respected him, but now she trusted him even deeper. She realized he might speak softly most of the time, but when it mattered, he spoke with courage. As evening arrived, they finished their chores and walked back to the house. The sky was painted with warm shades of orange and purple. The first stars appeared above the hills. Inside, they prepared dinner together. Tala chopped vegetables while Eli stirred a pot on the stove. Their movements were simple, natural, almost practiced as if they had been working together for years, not days. During dinner, Tala told Eli about the traditions in her home, how her people valued quiet strength, how they respected those who led without shouting, how they honored people who kept their word. Eli listened closely. "You think I fit that?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Tala said without hesitation. "More than you know." Eli's face warmed slightly. Compliments always made him shy, but Tala's honesty felt grounding. It's not overwhelming. After dinner, they stepped outside once more, letting the cool night air wash over them. Crickets hummed softly in the grass. The ranch glowed with the gentle light from the windows. Tala spoke first. "When I agreed to this marriage, I didn't know what kind of man I would meet." Eli stayed silent, listening. "I thought maybe you would be unsure," she continued. "Maybe afraid of me, or upset about the agreement." "I was unsure," Eli admitted. "But not upset? And now?" she asked. Eli thought for a long moment. Then he answered, "Now I'm glad you're here." Talaz's chest tightened. "Not with fear. With warmth. I'm glad too," she said. They stood side by side, watching the stars. The night wrapped around them gently, like a quiet promise. Finally, Tala said softly, "This home, it feels different now." Eli nodded. "It feels less empty, because we're not strangers anymore," Tala said. "Because we're trying," Eli corrected. "Both of us." Tala smiled, a slow, warm smile that reached her eyes. Eli saw it and felt something settle peacefully inside him. When they returned indoors, they prepared for rest. Tala arranged her blanket, and Eli checked the windows one last time. But before he blew out the lamp, Tala spoke again. "I want this to work," she said. "Not because our people asked, but because I see who you are." Eli looked at her for a long moment, then said slowly, "And I see who you are." Their eyes held each other's in quiet understanding. Then Eli put out the lamp. The darkness was soft, not frightening. Outside, the wind moved gently, carrying the smell of night grass across the valley. Inside, two people who had once been strangers now shared something deeper than words. They had built a partnership not fast, not forced, but patiently, day by day, storm by storm, and though neither said it aloud, they both knew the truth. This was no longer just a marriage of agreement. It was the beginning of a life they would choose. Again and again, side by side,